President Jokowi made a deal to back him and use the state apparatus to help install him as president. And Jokowi lent his own son, Gibran, to General Prabowo as his vice presidential running mate. And he did that even though the son of the president is too young to be vice president under Indonesian law. There's an age limit. He's only 36. You have to be a minimum age of 40. But he strong-armed that through the Supreme Court, where the president's brother-in-law was the chief justice. He strong-armed it through the Electoral Commission. Official state bodies have already ruled that those two actions were unethical, but it doesn't matter. The current ticket is General Prabowo, the massacre general, and Gibran, the president's underage son. And the whole state apparatus is being mobilized, on the one hand, to intimidate and threaten the poor with trouble and the cutoff of their food and their cooking oil if they don't vote for Prabowo. And on the other hand, mounting a very sophisticated, very disgusting public relations campaign, which portrays this notorious general as a gamoy, a fat, adorable cartoon character who in videos and in ads can be seen dancing. And to people who are not familiar with the history of the massacres, two of the worst slaughters of the 20th century, the U.S.-backed massacre when the Army first seized power in 1965 of anywhere from 400,000 to 1 million civilians, and then the murder of a third of the population by the invading Indonesian army in Timor with U.S. weapons and backing, and not familiar with Prabowo's role in that slaughter in Timor and elsewhere, to those people, because these matters are not discussed in the schools or in the state media, the ads have some impact, and that combined with the intimidation makes him a strong threat to take power in the election.
Well, Alan, specifically, you mentioned how Prabowo has sought to rebrand himself. But what of the youth of Indonesia, who now make up 52% of the electorate, those under 40? How have they bought into this narrative? And also, what does it say about a democratic elections that a general with this kind of a record is likely to be victorious in an election?
Well, we don't yet know if he's likely, but he's a strong threat to win, because the muscle of the state apparatus is behind him. Part of the reason they to some extent can get away with that, because textbooks and the press are not honest about how the army originally came to power, with the U.S.-backed slaughter in 1965 of anywhere to 400,000 to 1 million civilians. And then the invasion of East Timor with U.S. green light and weapons, where they killed a third of the population, which was the most intensive proportional slaughter since the Nazis. And they're definitely not familiar with General Prabowo's role in Timor and in the Aceh assassinations and in terrorizing civilian population in West Papua. And it's a two-pronged approach that they're using, basically pressuring and coercing the poor with threats to their well-being, because many poor people know they live at the mercy of what's called the aparat, the army and the police, and threats to their food. And then for the middle and upper classes, and especially the young people, this PR campaign that portrays the general as a cuddly cartoon character. And none of it would be possible without the backing of the incumbent civilian president, who basically bowed to Prabowo and the army after Prabowo's 2019 ultimate coup attempt. So by violence, Prabowo brought himself inside the government, and now that government is preparing to attempt, if necessary through fraud, to install him and give him the ultimate power. And he's talking about modifying the way the presidency works, returning to an older draft of the state constitution, which could make him a virtual dictator if he wants to be.
Alan, before we wrap up, a couple quick questions. Prabowo is the former son-in-law of the longtime authoritarian leader Suharto, responsible for Indonesia invading East Timor. You and I survived the 1991 massacre there, where Indonesian soldiers, armed, trained, and financed by the United States, opened fire on defenseless Timorese, killing more than 270 of them. They beat you up, fracturing your skull. talk about how Prabowo's involvement in Timor, killings in Indonesia as well, and then his supporting of coups led him to where he is today. I was amazed that he was willing to grant you an interview years ago where he talked about becoming a fascist dictator, and where he stands on everything from ISIS to what's happening today in Gaza. After all, Indonesia has the largest Muslim population in the world.
Yes, well, I met with him twice in 2001, and I was meeting with him because I was investigating two particular murders of civilians, and I wanted to find out what he knew about them. And I think possibly he enjoyed speaking to an adversary. But regarding the Santa Cruz massacre in Timor that we survived, Prabowo said to me that was an imbecilic operation. And he objected to it, not because of the hundreds of Timorese the army slaughtered, but because they did it in front of us. And because they did it in front of us, and we survived and were able to report it to the outside world, and other foreign witnesses like Max Stahl were able to do the same, we were able to get the U.S. Congress to, over time, through grassroots action in the United States, cut off for a while the U.S. arms supply to Suharto, which helped to lead to Suharto's downfall. According to Suharto's former security chief, Admiral Sudomo. So Suharto said that was imbecilic. He said, you don't do it in front of outside witnesses. You do a massacre in an isolated rural village where no one will ever know about it. And Prabowo was able to stage his series of coup attempts over the years, in part because he had the support of the Indonesian army, which was in turn backed by the United States. He, in particular, was the Americans' favorite. He described himself as the Americans' fair-haired boy. And he had the support of the Indonesian oligarchy as well. And he certainly has their backing in this election. And with regard to Israel, Prabowo, after he became defense minister, made a special effort to draw Indonesia closer to Israel. The two countries do not have diplomatic relations. The Indonesian population now is outraged by the slaughter, the genocide that Israel is conducting in Gaza. But Prabowo was attempting to bring Israel closer to Indonesia. There was already a covert relationship with Israeli intelligence and with the Israeli military, where intelligence equipment and training was given. And Prabowo started working with Trump and later Biden to attempt to bring the two countries together, similar to what other predominantly Muslim countries did under the Abraham Accords. Prabowo met with a senior Israeli security advisor. When this came out, he was forced to retreat from this policy. And at this moment, the Indonesian government and Prabowo are posing as if they oppose what Israel is doing. But if he becomes president, there's a very good chance that those relations will grow even closer and perhaps be formalized.